because I was induced at 38
Right.
weeks. So I didn't
Okay.
experience my water breaking the traditional way where you're at home waiting for baby to come. All of a sudden your water breaks.
Right.
My sister did. And she said that when her water broke, she called her OB, and the OB said, okay, well, this is your time to go ahead and eat something, maybe take
Yes.
a shower, pack your bags, and get everything in the car. And when you're ready, come to the hospital. You have
Right.
time.
Yeah.
They didn't really tell us that in the class, but I think you have time depending
Yeah.
on your situation.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Tijani Musa.
And I'm Yazmin Musa, and this is how we're doing it.
Welcome to our How We're Doing It. Here we'll share stories about our journey and experiences of being first-generation college graduates, our family, buying our first home, moving across the country, and living a debt-free lifestyle. We do so in an authentic, fun, and educational way to help other first-generation immigrants with similar paths. So, we are back at it. What are we discussing today?
Today we're talking about labor and delivery.
Labor and delivery.
Yes.
I'm sure it wasn't too long ago you and I were in that road and you were doing the work.
I have the exact notes we took when we took the class on September 11th, 2021.
Wow. Very specific. Very, very specific.
But it seems like yesterday, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. And then you walk out the door, you see a toddler outside screaming, yelling, punching you, kicking you.
She tries to put us on timeout.
Put you on timeout.
Like she literally at Target today. You know what she said to me? Go timeout. And I said, there was this old lady walking next to me who turned when she said that. And I was like, no, you don't put adults on timeout. If anybody needs timeout, it's you.
So with your toddler, we go to timeout at least 2-3 times a day.
Literally.
For things that she does, we're the one that get to go to timeout.
And did you see how yesterday she danced all her way to timeout?
Yeah. Now it's a sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to timeout. I'm going to
She's
timeout.
doing this little shimmy as she's walking over there.
Oh God.
Crazy.
So you remember the date, very specific.
Well,
huh?
I wrote it down. That's why I know.
All right. Well, let me check in with your mental state because labor and delivery is quite the thing.
Yeah.
It's very. It's an experience. How are you feeling 2 years after?
2 years and almost 3 months later.
Yes. How are you feeling now?
I'm at a point now where I can talk about it without crying.
Okay.
I don't think I could have shared my story. I don't think I could have shared information about it even a year after it happened. Just because I was not mentally prepared for that. I wasn't in a mental state where I could get through it without crying.
Yeah.
And now I am.
Okay. That's good. I understand. It was a very emotional time. Very labor intensive, to use the word labor. And I'm glad that 2 years after the date, you are at a space where you feel comfortable enough to share your experience so that the next person can benefit from it.
Absolutely. And this was my experience. And everyone's experience is going to be different. Every mom that I talk to, their experience is different.
Right. And that's the reality. But you have a place of reference.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we're still talking about bringing a kid to this world. And so that we can agree on.
Right.
But the experience-wise, it could be different for anyone.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started then.
So I'm going to start with the notes that I took from our class that we took, right?
Okay.
So we are almost full term, but not yet by the time we're like taking this class. And it was a class that was provided through our insurance. So, we attended. The first thing they said, your first sign of labor will be when your water breaks. Or contractions come.
Right.
One of the two. So they told us to look for the coat method. I don't know if you remember coat, but the color of the water, it should have no color when that liquid comes out. The odor, there should be no smell. A, the amount. Is it little or is it a lot? They ask you to keep track of that. And then the timing. When did it happen? So you want to make sure you know so you can tell your doctor, oh, it broke at this time. This is about how much it felt like. Give an estimate. It's really hard to tell. When my water broke, I thought I was gushing for like 20 minutes.
Right.
At least I felt like I was.
I mean, for a man, when the water breaks, we're like, oh, God, the baby is coming. But sometimes you have time from when the water breaks to when things
You do.
progress.
I did not experience that until because I was induced at 38 weeks. So I didn't experience my water breaking the traditional way where you're at home waiting for baby to come. All of a sudden your water breaks.
Right.
My sister did. And she said that when her water broke, she called her OB and the OB said, okay, well, this is your time to go ahead and eat something, maybe take a shower, pack your bags, and get everything in the car. And when you're ready, come to the hospital. You have time.
Yeah.
They didn't really tell us that in the class, but I think you have time depending on your situation.
Yeah. At least from what you just mentioned about Yenny.
Yeah.
That was how it played out.
Yeah.
Like, she was able to take a bath, eat, and waited for a little bit, and even was able to drive to the hospital. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
And then your contractions. So they say they're about 5 minutes apart.
Yes.
They're about 1 minute long. And then when they'll last like about an hour, that's when you want to be like, okay, we're going to the hospital.
Right.
When you're at the hospital, so one big thing that we did is we decided to room in with the baby. So what that means is you keep the baby at your bedside. And I have here in my notes that I wrote, I prefer baby room in with me because I think I wanted to remember exactly what to say.
Right.
That's just a preference.
Right.
We had our baby in the middle of the pandemic, and I really wanted to make sure that she wasn't exposed to anything or anyone that she didn't need to be exposed to. I also was terrified of my baby somehow getting lost. I'm sure hospitals are really safe, but I just wanted to make sure one of us had eyes on her at all time.
Yes. Yes. And maybe it's insurance specific, but when you're at the hospital, when the baby is delivered, there are some protective measures that the hospital does to ensure that the baby is safe, and not just a random person can walk out with that baby. They have a bracelet that the baby has. The parents also have the same bracelet that they can scan.
I know I had the same exact bracelet code. Did you have one too?
I believe I had one too. So
I don't remember.
Or maybe I didn't, but I know you did.
Yeah.
Well, the story is that even if I did not have that bracelet, being the father, I cannot take that baby outside of the hospital without you being there or being scanned.
I remember they told you, like, don't carry the baby. Put that little cart that they have, the clear cart where you can push the baby. They told us to keep the baby there. Like, even if you're just walking around the hospital or the floor, the recovery floor, keep that baby in there because the nurses are trained to tackle you if they see you holding the baby.
Straight up. They got the FBI's delivering babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
I do remember also, like, when they ask you, like, what's your birth plan, right?
Right.
Our hospital at the time had, like, a sheet that we could, like, check off. And I remember I checked off, like, I wanted to do skin to skin with the baby, make sure to breastfeed within, like, the first hour. And then I also, the second hour, I wanted to make sure you got skin to skin with the baby.
Right.
That's a plan, right? It's called a birth plan for a reason. It's a plan. It doesn't always mean it's gonna be followed to the T, but you do want to make sure you have an idea of what type of birth you'd like to have and plan for that, and then bring that with you to the hospital the day that you check in.
Yeah, speaking of the birth plan, I believe I still have the notes of our birth plan, and if the listeners need that information, like a template or anything like that, they can reach out, and I should be able to find it and share that with them.
Absolutely. some tips they gave me. So for those contractions, when they get really hard, find a focal point, bring a favorite picture or a favorite item, something that you can focus on to help you relax a little bit during those long contractions. For comfort, bringing pillows with colored cases, because all hospitals have like the white pillow, so you want to make sure yours stand out so you know which ones are yours.
Right.
And then the biggest thing I remember learning from that class is before you go home, you want to make sure that the baby has an appointment scheduled to see their pediatrician.
Do not leave the hospital without calling and scheduling that appointment because it fills up fast.
And a lot of hospitals actually require like information on who the baby's pediatrician is.
Right. You have to provide
beforehand.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to know that for sure.
Yep.
So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I didn't take too many notes for this labor and delivery class.
Yes.
A lot of it is like videos.
Right. Yeah, I remember. I watched a lot of videos about that class.
If you really want to look into it, I'm sure you can find plenty of stuff in the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
But I wanted to share more so like my story and how it came to be for us.
Yes.
So.
And that's what's more important, the experience that we have, because that's what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, like I mentioned before, at 38 weeks, I had to be induced. And the reason for that is because I developed cholestasis of pregnancy, which is a condition that slows or stops the normal flow of the bile in the gallbladder. And it can cause severe itching because the bile spills into your bloodstream. So for me, around 35 weeks, I was very, very itchy. Like, I'm not just talking like your belly's itchy because it's growing.
Right.
I'm talking my arms, my legs, every body part was itchy. It was unbearable. I was trying everything: oatmeal baths, cooling lotions, itching creams, all the things, and it wasn't helping.
Right.
And I felt terrible.
Right.
All the time. I was just so itchy. I would start scratching and just could not stop. And I remember I went to my OB and I told her about it. And my symptoms were dismissed. She said, I don't really think you have it, but let's go ahead and test you anyways.
Right.
And those tests are going to take not an hour. I wish it was an hour. Those tests are going to take a week to come back.
Yeah.
So I had that checkup on a Friday, and I was not going to hear back on my results until like a week from then, which I had my next appointment. At that point, we were going weekly because my pregnancy was very far along.
Yes.
So I wasn't going to hear about it till next Friday. So that morning, Friday morning, I get a call from my doctor saying that my cholestasis pregnancy test had came back positive, and instead of me getting ready for our afternoon appointment, she was just going to send me straight to the hospital to deliver the baby. We had to
go straight to the hospital, and we had to take everything that we've packed. Luckily, we've done all the packing. Everything is ready to go.
By like 35, maybe earlier. Our bags were packed.
Yeah.
Everything for the hospital was ready. I remember turning to you after I got the call, and I was like, so what do you need to do to make sure we can go to the hospital? And you're like, well, I think you were working.
Yes.
You were in the middle of your, midterms?
Yep.
You had a couple things to do.
I had a lot of things to do. I
was getting ready for work.
Yeah, we wasn't expecting Yazmin until 10 days after that. That's when she was,
It was on the 15th of October that we were sent to the hospital.
Right.
And yes, my doctor tells me, okay, it's time to go. Just, when you're ready. In my mind, I'm like, well, okay, remember, I'm getting ready for work, so I'm half ready. I'm kind of hungry, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to make myself a shake. I'm going to be healthy, That was the worst idea ever. I should have had a full, proper meal. Matter of fact, I should have gone to Chick-fil-A or somewhere yummy. Qdoba, somewhere where I could have eaten, and I could have eaten lots because the rest of the day I was starving.
That is very important.
I was so hungry, and once I got to the hospital, because they don't know if you're going to deliver naturally or you're going to have a C-section, right? Because
Right.
anything can happen because I'm being induced.
Right.
And so they're like, yeah, no, we can't give you anything except ice,
Yes.
juice,
I remember that.
maybe. I was so hungry, and thank God, oh my God, there was a nurse who gave me a banana and a wrap, and I remember I ate it with so much excitement, and I was so thankful for her, because she was like, I get it, sweetie, you're starving here, just eat something.
And this is after 2 nurses left their shifts. She came in and
No, I
she
think she was like our first or second nurse.
was probably the second one, because the first one was very strict.
The old lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the second one.
The second one.
She was a lot more chill.
Oh God. Yeah.
Anyways, so we get the call in the morning.
Right.
We get as much as we can ready. Like, mind you, that Friday, that weekend, I was supposed to like clean, the apartment, get things ready. I think before we left for the hospital, you ended up sweeping and mopping and trying to clean up a little bit. And
Yeah, because your thing is that you don't want to come back to a dirty house.
yeah,
So,
I didn't want to bring the baby to a dirty place.
Right. So we've always been on the alert, standby, ready to go. Yes.
So I get to the hospital after they do the check-in and all that. At this time, it's probably like around noon. They give me Pitocin, which is one of the medications they use to kickstart labor. And then the process starts. Everything is fine at first. I'm just hungry. In the meantime, I'm watching Netflix. I'm bouncing on the yoga ball. You're working on your midterms. It's pretty uneventful, honestly.
Yes.
We're just chilling at the hospital. Then later that night, I wake up. Well, I was up, but I get out of the bed and go use the bathroom to like brush my teeth. I want to get like ready for bed. I wash my face. And then on my way back to the bed, I guess as I was like getting on the bed, my water broke, which is a good sign, right? Like, your water breaks, yay. And that's when I called the nurse. I was like, hey, I think my water broke. And so she comes to check, and I'm like, I feel like I'm leaking. Like, I'm just, for 20 minutes, I think everything I've ever drank in my life is like coming out of me. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much water. Yeah, crazy.
All the Starbucks.
And she just made me feel super comfortable. Like, it was no big deal. After that, my contractions did intense.
Right.
That's when intensify. That's when, I actually started feeling them. The pain was there. It happened very fast after my water broke.
Right.
And I did opt into getting the epidural just because I wanted to make sure that I didn't suffer too much.
Right.
And I don't know. For me, I always said, I'll go as long as I can. And then if I need it, I know it's an option.
And you did that. You went as much as you could. And then in the last minute, you decided, we need to take the next step.
Right.
Yeah.
And the whole time we're at the hospital, the baby's being monitored. She was in distress. They found that she was having little movement. This is like after my water breaks, and her heart rate is kind of dropping. They're not seeing what they want from her.
Right.
So, once I get my epidural, it seems like that was the consequence. Like, our baby just kind of started being very drowsy. And I remember like barely sleeping. You really can't sleep, like
no sleeping.
There's no such thing.
It's like worse than being in
yeah.
college and doing a all-nighter.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
You're just uncomfortable. Nurses coming in to check on you, check on the baby, all the things.
Yeah.
Around noon, so 24 hours later, about this is Saturday morning, a new doctor comes in for the day, and she just came in and ready to discuss options at that point. They had monitored the baby since my water breaking, and like I said, the baby wasn't having a lot of movement. It seemed like she was in distress, so she gave us all our options. And at that point, we made the choice to opt for a C-section.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing she shared with us is at any point, I can come in here and I have to get your baby out of you in like 4 minutes.
Right.
So, do you want to do it with time, or do you want me to rush in here and do it? Yeah, she didn't say it that way. That's just what I recall, and I'm summarizing, but because of the cholestasis of pregnancy, our baby was at risk of complications. She was full term at that point, so we were like, you know what? We just want a healthy baby.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. We just want a healthy baby. I, at that point, was exhausted, and I just wanted my baby here.
Right.
Whew.
Man, this is deep. Even 2 years and some change after, I can still feel like the goosebumps and the emotions that led up to that day. And as much as it was an exciting situation given everything involved, and obviously when the baby arrives and the baby is healthy, the most beautiful thing ever. But leading up to that, I still get goosebumps just hearing about what you're saying.
I think the hardest part is all along I was hoping for the best, right? Like,
Right.
I'm going to have a healthy delivery. Everything's going to be okay. And thank God I did.
Right.
But at that very moment, it didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And I was not prepared for hearing C-section, that word. I wasn't prepared. That I did no research about it. I didn't learn anything about recovery or do's and don'ts. None of that.
Right.
I had no idea. So
that is before you go, that is one of a huge takeaway, right, from that, because leading up to the labor and delivery, most of the research that you've done is on what quote unquote normal vaginal birth, and we didn't have any information around C-section, what it takes, and what happens after. So that was a shocking revelation once we were at the hospital.
Yeah, that's the first thing, is the shock. Like, I assumed everything would go well. I'm naturally my water's gonna break. I'll head to the hospital. We'll start the process, and that didn't happen. And one thing I wrote with that in my notes is to remember that when it comes to delivering a baby, you can't predict what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if you are going through that shock that, oh my God, I ended up with a C-section, you have to remember that you are not alone. Share your story with a friend, your therapist, a new mom's group, whoever you trust and you feel like you can share it with. Talk to them. It is normal to feel sad about missing precious bonding time with your baby, because after a C-section, you're cut open, right? And you need to be stitched back up. And so your babies might be handed to you. They might not be, just depending on the situation.
Right.
And so it's normal to feel sad that that baby did not go directly on your skin and you didn't get a chance to breastfeed immediately after this baby came.
Right.
One big thing that I felt is that I really felt distant from my baby. And I think you have to keep in mind that that's normal. You're going to feel distant from the baby no matter the type of delivery that you have. The baby is like a stranger to you, right?
Right.
The baby was just born. You have to take time to learn each other and establish that relationship, and that's normal. But at the time, right, like, I was so upset that I missed this hour, and then the rest of the day, right, I was so drugged out that I was just knocked out completely. I was asleep most of the day, could barely hold my baby. safely, you know, without falling asleep. And I felt like I really missed out on that time. And it took me a long time to recover from that.
Right.
Because with that comes the mom guilt. So your baby's hours old and you already feel like you're a bad mom. Somehow you feel like you did something wrong. But you have to remember you didn't. You didn't do anything wrong. My doctor, about like 2 or 3 days after I had the baby, I think I had her on a Saturday, and Monday morning, I had a call with my doctor, my OB, and she called, and I just cried over the phone with her. I cried and cried, and I told her what I was feeling, that I was sad about missing that bonding time, that I was grieving that I didn't have this typical pregnant delivery experience. And she was raw. She was real with me. She was like, it's okay. It's okay for you to feel this way. You should feel this way. That is normal. And there's nothing wrong with you. And she was like, it doesn't matter that your husband got to bond with her a little extra. That baby knows who you are. She knows your scent. She knows your voice. There's no such thing as missed time. You have a lifetime with her.
Yes.
And at the moment, you know, it eased my pain a little bit, but to really take those words, the power of those words, and really accept them and learn that everything she said is correct, and, you know, that I have a lifetime with her, that part took years for me to come to a place where I can accept that and be okay with that.
Yeah.
And then I think another feeling that I had too is I felt bad that I was feeling bad, because at the end everything turned out fine, right? And I was okay and the baby was okay. And so I was like, I should just be grateful that everything went well. You know, I'm here. I have this baby. Like, I think I wish I would have just given myself that opportunity to be sad and to be okay with being sad and know that those feelings were valid, that I needed that time to process what I had gone through and to heal from that trauma of not having that picture perfect delivery that in my mind I thought I was going to have. So I would suggest that if you're struggling, the first thing I would say is just stop pretending you're okay and ask for help.
Right.
Share your feelings with someone you're close with. You can be grateful and sad too, because both emotions are valid.
That's important. We're humans.
So, on a happy note, Yazmin Noor Musa came October 16th, 2021 at 12:51 p.m. She was 8 pounds and 20 inches long. Healthy, beautiful, glowing. She was with you. You and her, you were able to be in the delivery room with me while I was having the C-section. You were by my face.
Yes. And the only place I could have been.
Yeah. And after they took her out of me, she got cleaned up, and you and her actually left the room to go wait for me while I was getting stitched up.
It was emotional.
Yeah.
Did you know that when they took the baby, they cleaned her up, they lift her up like Lion King? They said, "Here's your baby." I could not look at the baby. I just put my head down and started crying.
Like, I remember them saying, like, "Daddy, look, Daddy, look."
Daddy was crying. Because the whole time you were going through the process, my mom was in my head. Make sure you're praying for your wife. That's somebody's daughter. make sure that she's safe. That's your responsibility. And so I'm seeing you go through all these emotions, this delivery labor thing. There's nothing I could do to help other than just being there and praying for you. And my mom still being in my head. And it was a very, very tough time. And so when the baby came, the nurses were trying to show me the baby. I just lost it and started crying. I was crying louder than the baby itself. So I was like a big baby.
I did get to hold her. Thank God. I know there's certain moms who go through a C-section who have to be completely asleep, and they don't get a chance to do that. But I was awake, and they did place her by my face, and I got to touch her and feel her. We didn't get to do skin to skin or breastfeeding until I was in like post-op observation. But you know, that moment still came.
Yes.
In the meantime, like you did it with her, right?
Yep, I did skin to skin. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I remember, and I told you this the other day, like looking back on my C-section and my recovery and why it was so painful for me. I think one of the big things is that you're prescribed opioids to help with the pain, and I'm someone who was just not comfortable taking the opioids because I have extended family that has a history of drug abuse, and I have family who's passed away from that, and I don't want to risk it. And it's a personal choice, you know, but I finally, you know, looking back at it a couple weeks ago, I remember telling you, I'm like, I think that's why it was much more painful for me than it could have been.
Yes.
Because I was just being brave and trying to be strong and taking my ibuprofen and, you know, trying to go about it.
Yeah. In a safer way.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong way.
Right.
But that was just something that I wasn't comfortable doing. So I also didn't want it to affect my milk supply. So I wanted to breastfeed, and that's a whole other story.
Right.
After C-section, anytime I got up, I felt like my insides were literally gonna fall out. I remember walking very, very slow.
And our bed was so high, you had to like first sit down and then lift up your feet. It was a whole process.
Yeah. I don't know why we had such a high bed.
we learned because we didn't know that that's how painful it's going to be after that. And so we just kept everything the same in terms of bedding. But now that we've learned a thing or two about that, the approach will be different. It's more experienced.
Yeah. I think some advice that I have is just, if you're recovering from a C-section, rest, take care of yourself, let others help you. You literally just had major surgery.
Yes.
You should not be lifting anything heavier than your baby. Wear loose, comfy clothing. Wear diapers. They're comfy. You're going to have vaginal discharge. It's going to happen. The minute that baby gets taken out of you, you're going to start bleeding. So wear the diapers. It's okay.
Yes.
Even if it's, you know, it's just for a little. It's not forever. And then I would say, if you're a brave mom who's about to have a baby and you powered through my story, I would suggest that you just do a little bit of research about it so you know like what to expect in case you're put in that situation. And your partner should also do a little bit of research about it to make sure they know how they can support you. I didn't do any of that, and I wish I had. Going back, I wish I had prepared for either scenario. I wish I had known a little more information about C-sections. If you're if you're at the hospital and you don't know anything about it, your best resource is your doctor and your nurses. And that's really what I did, is just relied on them for all the questions, and to get as much information as I could.
Absolutely. First, let me start by saying that you are brave, and thank you for taking the time to share your story. And not only your story, but this is a personal thing that happened to you and that happened to our family. And you were strong and brave to sit here and being able to share this story to the world. It's huge. It's strength. It shows how much you've been able to overcome these past 2 years, and the strength that you've gained just having your baby and your baby being healthy. And so I just want to take the time to thank you for sharing with everyone your story. It's absolutely remarkable.
Thank you. I'm proud of myself. And I didn't cry, for those wondering.
And
I really didn't cry. I teared up a little bit, but that's okay. I didn't cry.
Absolutely. Strength.
Yeah.
I've never seen you this strong. You've been able
I've grown a lot. I did a lot of inner work on me and healing in my heart.
I love it.
It's part of being a mom. So
Yeah.
I don't pass my little traumas to Yazmin.
Okay. I love it. You have anything else you want to impart on the listeners?
No. Any of my friends that share with us that they're pregnant, we pray a lot for them around, the time that we know delivery's coming up. I highly believe in the power of prayer, and if you're going through it as a listener, you are now part of our family. So we pray for you and for your pregnancy, that it may be healthy, that your delivery is healthy, and at the end of the day, that you have a healthy baby in your arms, which is all that matters.
And this is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of How We're Doing It. We want to hear from you. Contact us at hwdipodcast@gmail.com or leave a comment. If you like the show, consider subscribing in order to get notified of new episodes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again on the next episode.
Mama. Bye-bye.